Hey guys, welcome to my channel. We're reading Emily Windsnap and the Ship of Lost Souls. We are going to be reading chapter 9 and chapter 10 today. So, yeah, we're going to get to that in just a sec. Don't mind all the pages. Okay. Alright, chapter 9. I stumbled out of the office. Weirdo, Mandy hissed. Come on, let's go upstairs. We'll probably find more useful stuff up there anyway. Aaron replied, I'll just tell Miss Platt that there won't be any more talks. I'll meet you up there. I followed Mandy upstairs in a trance. Em, are you okay? Aaron asked once we were all up at the observation deck. You've gone white, Mandy added. You are sick. Was I? Maybe I was. Perhaps it was a hallucination. Either way, I knew I couldn't keep it to myself. I had to tell them what I'd seen. There was a photo on the desk, I said, my voice coming out in such a query shake that it sounded as if I were singing. Aaron held my eyes and nodded at me to go on. I didn't see it, he said. What was it? What was something that upset you? No, well, yes, I don't know. It was a woman. Oh, yeah, I saw it on my way in, Mandy said. Long red hair, smiley eyes, quite pretty. That was the one. They both waited for me to go on. I've seen her before, I mumbled, on the ship, out at the sea. Mandy's jaw dropped open. You're kidding, Aaron breathed. I'm not. I mean, I might be wrong, but you don't think you are, Mandy finished. I shook my head. No, I'm positive it was her. Aaron whistled. That is seriously freaky, he muttered. I bristled at his words. Was he calling me a freak? Not you, he added quietly. Her, him, this place. What is going on around here? I shrugged. I had no idea what was going on around here. Mandy broke the silence. She was standing by the door that led into the observation room. Look, we're in the best place to find out, she said. If there's a spooky ship somewhere near this island, surely we'll see it from here. A watchtower with windows all the way around it. And if there is information about the ship, it'll be in here. If it's anywhere, Aaron added. Lyle told us there were lots of reference books and maps here. Okay, so we find what we can here, I said, and we don't give up till we searched every corner of the place, Mandy finished. Aaron led the way. Okay, agreed. Oh my gosh. Aaron led the way. Agreed. Okay, let's go. Half an hour later, we'd used every telescope and pair of binoculars in the room to scan the ocean from the closest shores all the way out to the horizon. Nothing. Ship was definitely not out there. We discarded the folders labeled Flora and Fauna, bypassed the ones named Flotsam and Jetsam, ignored butterflies and bugs, and a quick flip through the one titled Reefs and Rocks showed us that even those were of no use to us. Finally, we found that we were looking for 3 whole shelves folders labeled shipwrecks and local landmarks. Bingo! Mandy whispered. Aaron pulled out 3 folders and put them on the table in the middle of the room. Come on, he said. Let's get to work. We flicked through the papers, ignoring our classmates who came and went around us. Mostly they ran straight for the telescopes, looked out to the sea for a bit, then wandered around picking up binoculars and walkie-talkies before getting bored and leaving us to it. Mandy was halfway through the new folder when she nudged me. Em, she said. Uh-huh. I looked up from the page entitled Some Pleasure boats that have visited our shores in recent years. What did the ship look like again? Mandy asked. Big, I said. Really big and long, with a dark blue hull, 3 masts, and sail that. Did it look anything like this? Mandy held her folder up to show me the picture she found. It looked exactly like it. I couldn't speak. Aaron glanced up from what he was doing. He saw the page Mandy was holding, saw my face, and came to my side. That's the one. Is it? Isn't it? I held my hand out for the folder. Let me see. Mandy passed it across to me. There were 3 pictures on the page. I studied them. One by one, the first showed the ship from the distance. You could see the bowsprit junting proudly forward, the 3 tall masts behind. I couldn't see the sails because they were wrapped up and rolled away. But from what I could see, this looked like the same ship. The second photo showed a closer side view, the long, sleek hull, dark blue, and rising outward at the sides. Again, the sails were wrapped up. They looked much neater than the scrabby bits of cloth I'd seen, but everything else looked more or less the same. I was about to say this was definitely the ship, but when I glanced at the third photo, I wasn't so sure. This one showed a detail of the front of the hull. The netted hammock was the same. The mermaid dragon figurehead was there, looking just as spooky, but the lettering along the front of the hull, something about it was different. On this third picture, I could clearly see the ship's name, Prosperius. Was that the same name? It sounded familiar, but not quite right. What was different about it? Underneath the photos, an extract from the newspaper article that's been stuck onto the page. There was just one paragraph of text. Porphyrius was built in 1857. It was one of the many ships that built during the golden age of sail that were intended to be effected commercial sailing ships. Prosperius carried people, goods, and mail for almost 40 years until the illustrious career was brought to the abrupt end by the tragic wrecking in 1893. I stopped reading as my eyes glanced over. Tragic wrecking, Aaron murmured. So it was a ghost ship, Mandy replied. I mean, I know I joked about it, but I didn't really think. No, wait. I stopped them both. Look at this. Beneath the newspaper extract was another piece of paper. This one contained 2 sentences. To mark the centils of the dismiss, the Prosperius of Replica was built in 1993. Prosperius 2 serves mostly as a luxury passenger ship, although it carries some specialized cargo from time to time. Prosperius 2, that was the name of the ship I had seen. The replica, I said, pointing at the words to the page that were now beginning to swim beneath my gaze. That was the one I saw. You sure? Aaron asked. I nodded. It had the name of the hull. It was definitely Prosperius 2. Apart from that, it looked exactly like this ship. So we found it, Mandy said. Wow. Yeah, I agreed. Aaron was stroking his chin. But okay, let's look at this logically. I almost laughed. Logically, I asked, how are we supposed to be logical about any of this? Well, let's look at the facts. If Prosperius 2 was the ship you saw, which I'm positive it was, then it wasn't a shipwreck, unless the replica one was wrecked too, Mandy put in. Aaron tilted his head and frowned. Yeah, I guess. But that highly unlikely, Mandy conceded. She flicked over a couple more pages, and surely it would have said something in here if it had been. These folders seem pretty thorough. Okay, so let's assume the Prosperius didn't meet the same fate as the original Prosperius, Aaron went on. Then we know that the ship I saw wasn't a shipwreck, and it wasn't a ghost ship either, I said. Aaron nodded. Correct. So what was it then? Mandy asked. I looked at her. I guess that's what we need to figure out. Aaron gazed around the room. We need to we need a computer, he said. We need to Google Prosperius too. There's bound to be some information on the Wikipedia or something. You're right, Mandy agreed. I can hardly believe there's no internet on this entire island. I've tried to get reception on my phone about 100 times. Wait, I'd had a thought. There's a computer, just one. Maybe it's connected to the internet. Where is it? Aaron asked. Lyle's office. Of course, Mandy's eyes beamed. It is connected. I remember noticing a wire attached to the modem and thinking how quaint that it had to be wired up like for internet access. It probably is the only place on the whole island where we can get online. That's fantastic, Aaron said. We just need to get back in there. I said. That's not going to be the easiest task in the world, given the way our last encounter ended. What, you mean the fact that he kicked us out of his office and then locked himself away in there and said he was going to talk to anyone else all day? Aaron asked. You think perhaps now it's isn't it the best time for us to go back in and ask him to do us a favor? I gave him a playful punch in the side. Maybe not. I agree. We need to distract him somehow. Get him out of the office so we can sneak in and use his computer. Mandy was looking out of the window. Hold on, she said. I think I've got an idea. Aaron and I watched from upstairs till we saw Lyle leave the watchtower with Mandy. We were waiting quite a while. I guess it took quite a bit of persuasion for Mandy to get him to talk to her at all, let alone leave his office. Yes, Aaron suddenly examined. She's done it. Look. I glanced out the window in time to see Mandy leading Kyle along the cliff towards the clump of bright yellow flowers. A few minutes walk away. Mandy had seen these from the window, and the plan was that she would ask Lyle so many questions and she could think of about these and the island's plant life in general to keep him talking and away from the watchtower. While she was doing that, we'd use his computer to get online and find out anything we could about Prosperius too. Come on, let's go, I said. We scurried down the stairs to the ground floor, past the private no entry door, and headed to the office. Luckily, Lyle had left it unlocked and we sneaked inside. I followed Aaron around to Lyle's chair behind his desk. I couldn't help glancing at the photo of the woman in the frame. It was definitely the woman I'd seen through the porthole. I was sure of it. Aaron and I both perched on Lyle's chair, and Aaron's typed Prosperius 2 into the search bar. The first page brought up links to the couple of art galleries, an ancient temple, 3 banks, and a quote from the Bible. Hang on. I reached for the keyboard, this time typing, tall ship named Prosperius 2. That's better, Aaron said, as the page loaded with links and tall ships. There were a lot of them. Wow, seems like Prosperius is quite a popular name for a boat, I murmured, as we clicked on each link to see what it said. There were all sorts of ships, mostly modern ones, but a few older ones. None that looked like the one I've seen. Just try searching for pictures, I suggested. Aaron clicked the image tab on the top of the page, and finally, we were getting somewhere. The page loaded with row after row of photos of ships, mostly tall ships, and many of them looking like the ones I've seen. I studied them all, scrolled down row by row. Finally, on about the 20th row, I saw it. I jagged a finger across the screen. That's it. Are you sure? Positive. The writing on the whole looks exactly the same, and the dragon mermaid figurehead would be hard to mistake. That's the ship, definitely. Aaron clicked on the image. More photos came up. Underneath them was a link with Prosper Vacations. Go straight to the website written beside it. He clicked the link. While we waited for the page to load, I got up and looked out the window. Lyle was still outside with Mandy. She was pointing to the tree halfway down the hillside. Lyle had his hand in his pockets and looked impatient to get away. Keep him talking, Mandy. Just a couple more minutes. It's a passenger ship, Aaron said, like the original one. Kind of. That one carried cargo too, didn't it? I tried to remember what the information in the folder had said. Yes, I think so. Commercial goods and passengers. I came back over to the computer and looked over his shoulder. This one is run by a vacation company. Aaron clicked another button and a list of dates prices came up. He whistled as he looked at the figures. A very exclusive vacation company by the look of it, I said. I'll say. He clicked on September and we studied the dates. It sets sail every 2 weeks, and if the information is up to date, it looks like the most recent trip left last Monday a week ago. Does it say where it left from? I asked. Can't see anything. We studied the page. Look, there in the top corner. I pointed to the square of contained a small picture of a map. Aaron clicked the picture and the image opened up a full size, and squiggly red line on the map indicated that was presumably the ship course. At the various points along the line there were numbers from 1 to 14. That must be where the ship is on each day, I mused. I guess. So last Monday was day 1. I followed the line, charting the ship's journey. In the first 2 days, it skirted along the coast. The next 2 were spent out at sea and got as far as day 5. Aaron said, I said, my voice coming out like a ramps of dying man. I couldn't manage more than one word. Instead of just pointing to the number, day 5, Aaron said, what about it? I took the mouse, clicked on the enlarge the map further. The area around the day 5 mark filled the screen. The red line ran along the side of an island, and from the picture there was no doubt about which island it was. Aaron let out a long breath. It was due to arrive here, he said. Yeah, I agreed. But the fact that the mysterious ship had been due to pass 5 Bays Island last Friday wasn't the weirdest thing. The weirdest thing was that it should have passed by quickly and moved to the same day. So why hadn't it continued its journey? Why wasn't it 300 miles out at sea by now? And why were Aaron and I the only ones who could see it? The question beats against my mind, mixing together with the picture of the woman's face and her words, help us, help us. I had no idea what any of this meant, but I knew one thing. The ship was somehow stuck, and until we figured out how to free it, nothing else on this field trip was going to hold on idea from my attention. Alright, chapter 10. Aaron tugged at my sleeve. He stood up and was looking out the window. Lyle's coming back. We need to go. I shook myself out of my thoughts. Quick, close the web page and let's get out of here, he said. I clicked the close button on all the pages we'd visited and prayed Lyle wouldn't check the browser history and realized that someone had used his computer. Aaron was by the door looking out. Ready? He whispered. We have a lot of stairs till he's back in his office. If we walk out now, it'll look too obvious. We scurried out of the office and up the spiral staircase, just in time to see Lyle coming back into the building, go into his office and close the door behind him. Once his office door was closed, I let out a breath as my knees almost buckled under me. You okay? Aaron asked. I shrugged. I had no idea whether or not I was okay. I didn't have too much time to think about it. I thought someone was coming up the stairs. There you are, Mandy said. Did you find anything? Oh yeah, Aaron replied. We found something. She beckoned us downstairs. Great. Tell me about it on the way to lunch. Miss Platt says we're joining Shiprock for a picnic at Sandy Bay. Aaron and I filled Mandy in as we made our way over to meet the others. So where do we go with this now? Mandy asked as we arrived at the beach, echoing the question lurking in the back of my mind. I have no idea, I admitted. We wandered down to the water edge where the Shiprock kids were arriving. Maybe Shauna and Seth will have some ideas. We reached the shallow waves lapping softly onto the sand. We'll tell them everything over lunch. Aaron said, surely between the 5 of us, we should be able to come up with some kind of plan. Shauna and Seth listened to the whole story as we ate our lunch and splashed in the soft waves. Shauna's eyes had gone all wide and watery, like they always do when we start getting involved in adventure. This week is turning out to be so much more exciting than I'd thought it would be, she breathed. I couldn't help wincing. She hadn't seen the woman on the ship, her eyes scared and desperate. I shook the image out of my mind and tried to think about the smiling version of Lyle's desk instead. But that just made me confused. Who was this woman? As if I'd spoken the question out loud, Mandy suddenly blurted out, do you think she's his wife? We all turned and looked at her. Lyle's wife, she went on. I mean, she is in the picture frame on his desk. Don't you think that makes a quite likely? Mandy was right. And that would fit with the way Lyle had questioned me about the boat. It was when I said I hadn't seen anything like that. He went all weird and said that he didn't want to talk to us anymore. I mused. Shauna's eyes had gone super sparkly. Of course. She's Lyle's wife. She must be. Even if she is, that doesn't make this some kind of romantic story. I snapped. Shauna looked at it as if I had slapped her. I'm sorry, I said quietly. Sorry? No, I'm sorry, Shauna said. You're right. I'm getting carried away, being excited by a mystery, but you're the one who's seen all these scary things. I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot, I said, but thanks. Seth was frowning as though he were thinking hard. Even if she is his wife, and it doesn't give us any more answers. If anything, it only raises more questions. Exactly, I agreed, and would love to try to find some answers without creating more questions. Seth glanced at Aaron, then at me. Well, do you know what you have to do, don't you? Mandy broke in. She has to talk to Lyle. I do? Seth nodded. He's the only person who can tell you if the woman in the photo is his wife. And if she is, he's the only person who might know how she got onto that ship, Mandy added. They were right. Aaron nodded. I'll come with you, he said. We'll figure out exactly what to say. We'll do it carefully, and we'll do it together. I looked at him for a moment. His face was set and serious. Okay, I agreed. Thank you. Good luck, Seth said. I'll check in with you in a few days to see how you're doing. In a few days? What do you mean? Aaron asked. Unfortunately, duty calls. Seth had been summoned by the back to work. Shauna explained. Seems Neptune's getting his tail in a tizzy without him. I'm heading off this evening on the high tide. I'm hoping I can come back before the end of the week. But Neptune. I'm sure he'll have 100 urgent matters and need dealing with before then. We'll miss you, Aaron said. I was still lost in my thought about Lyle and the ship, so I only half took in what Seth was saying. But something about what he'd said was nudging at me. When high tide, I asked, about 6-ish, just before, why? It had been high tide when I seen the ship in the channel yesterday, which would have been about an hour earlier than today's high tide. What about the first time? When had that been? Aaron, when did we find that chair? I asked. Aaron turned to me. Huh? Yesterday? No, I mean, what time? He frowned. Can't remember. It was in the morning. Maybe 11:30, I nodded. Why? Mandy asked. It's nothing, I said, but was it nothing? If high tide had been just after 5 yesterday, low tide would have been about 6 hours earlier, which would have been around the same time that Aaron and I saw the ship. Was it significant? Could the tides have anything to do with us seeing it? If so, did that mean we might be able to see it again at high tide tonight? Did I want to see it again? Aaron was looking at me with a "you sure you're okay" expression on his face. "What are you thinking?" Shauna asked. I shrugged. "It's just the ship I think was high tide when I saw it in the second time." Shauna jumped in the waves, her tail flicking a bit in the water in my eyes. I rubbed it again. "It was," she said, "because remember we had to meet up just after high tide and we were the last ones to the beach. So I figured it was probably exactly high tide while we were out there. And that's why you were asking about when we found the chair," Aaron mused. "But if that was in the morning, it couldn't have been high tide then too," Mandy said. "No," Seth agreed. "But it could have been low tide." "Exactly," I said. "I think it might have been on the low high tides then that I saw it. Not that that helps us understand any more about it." "Maybe not," Aaron admitted, "but any connections we can make are better than none at all." I nodded. "Yeah, let's hope so." "I've got an idea," Shauna said. "Let's meet later, when Seth has to go. He leaves on the high tide, so we're right that the ship has got something to do with the tides. Perhaps you'll see it again." "It's worth a try," Aaron said. "Maybe we could swim the first part of his journey with him. Head out towards where you saw the ship." A shiver ran down my spine, like a cold piece of seaweed brushing against me. Did I want to see the ship up close again? The people? The woman? On the other hand, could I really leave all this question unanswered? "Okay, sounds like a plan," I said eventually. "But what about you, Mandy? I'll cover for you back in the cabin. We'll have free time then. But if you're not back when we sit down for dinner at 7, I'll come up with an excuse for you." I caught Mandy's eye. "Thank you," I said, and hoped she knew I was thanking her for much more than just making up an excuse for us to skip dinner. She held my look for a moment. "Yeah, it's cool," she replied. "Swishy," Shauna said. "Then after dinner, you guys can go see Lyle." All of which means that by tomorrow morning, one way or another, we should have at least a few answers to all of these mysterious questions, Aaron said. "All right, children, you've had a long enough for your lunch." Miss Platt was standing up and wiping sand from her skirt. "We're going to form interschool groups for this afternoon's activity. First of all, we'd like you to share what you found out this morning." I smiled at the others. "Well, we already done that. Maybe we'd get the afternoon off." "And once you've done that," Miss Platt continued, dashing my hopes of the free afternoon playing with my friends, "we're going to meet at Pebble Bay, where we will start our geology study of the island. Interesting rock formations." "You're kidding," Mandy muttered. "Could they have thought of anything more boring than that?" As if she'd heard us, Miss Platt added, "Remember, this is a school trip. It's not a vacation. You were here to have a good time, but also to learn. Now form groups, people, and this time we want you to get together with people you haven't teamed up with before. As well as everything else, we're getting to know one another this week." She paused and shot a look into our direction before adding, "If you join up with the same group of friends for every activity, you're hardly pursuing to cause the bringing two worlds together." "She means us," Mandy grumbled. "Seems like it," Shauna agreed. "I guess I'll see you later." "Meet you at 6 at Deep Blue Bay," I suggested. "Mandy will cover for us in the cabin, and the rest of us will swim out with Seth from there." "Sounds like a plan," Aaron agreed as we broke up the group to find new people to talk to. As we parted company, and I teamed up with Gimia from my class and Maureen and Gabe from Shamrock, I couldn't help wonder if I was looking forward to meeting up with everyone again later or dreading it. The afternoon passed surprisingly quickly, but that studying and geology formation of the island is interesting. But hanging out with new people and taking my mind off of all the weird stuff was actually quite refreshing. which meant that 6 o'clock came around fast, and it was soon time to start facing all the question marks again. Aaron and I went over the plan with Mandy one last time as we walked to Deep Blue Bay. So remember, if you come in late, you say you lost your shoes at Sandy Bay and had to go back for them, Mandy said, and I went with her so I could help her over the rocks of the top of the beach, Aaron suggested. I gave him a really kind of look. What? Aaron held his arm out in a helpless shrug. It's rough ground out over there, and if you had no shoes on, you'd need some help. I laughed and decided not to point out that I'd already walked pretty much the length of the island without shoes on. Besides, I need some kind of excuse to be with you, he insisted, and anyway, we'll probably be back by then. Okay, whatever, we'll go with that, I conceded. We'd reached Deep Blue Bay. Mandy pointed out to sea. Look, there they are. Shauna and Seth had propped up from under the water and were waving at us from the middle of the bay. See you soon, Seth, Mandy called to them, waving back. Good luck with Neptune. Seth gave Mandy a salute, and Shauna beckoned us to join them. It's high tide in 15 minutes, she called up. We'd better get going. I turned to Mandy. Thank you for everything. She waved off my thanks. Okay, I'm heading back to the cabin. See you later. Just be careful, okay? We will, I promised. We piled up our shoes behind the rock. We already put our swimwear on underneath our clothes. Ready? Aaron asked as we walked to the edge of the bay and prepared to dive in. My stomach did a tiny twirl. Yes, it was spooky. Yes, the ship was surrounded by more question marks than portholes. And yes, the mysterious woman had haunted my thoughts ever since I'd seen her. But this was an adventure, no matter what else happened. I was pretty sure we couldn't guarantee it would be 100 times more exciting than anything that had ever happened on any other Brightport geography field trip. You bet, I smiled. Let's go. Chapter 11. We'd been swimming for about 10 minutes. It was nearly high tide, and we'd reached the channel where I'd seen the boat yesterday. This is definitely where you were last time, Aaron asked. Yeah, I think so. Although, to be honest, with all the twists and turns, it looks pretty similar all the way along. Shauna pointed at the bunch of rocks heaped over into the dome that looked like an underwater igloo. It's the same place, she said. I remember that. A moment later, everything felt still, just as it had the day before. Fish stopped moving, seaweed stopped swaying. Slack tide, Seth said quietly. Slack tide, what is that? I asked. It's a time in between the tide coming in and turning around to go back out. It happens at high tide, or the other way around, Shauna added. You get slack tide at low tide, too. It basically is a period where the sea pauses between doing one thing and turning around to do the opposite. I've never felt it like this before, though. Seth went on. This still. It's as if the whole world has stopped, not just the tide. Seth was right. It did feel like that, and it had felt exactly the same way the day before, too. I was about to respond when something stopped me. Two things, actually. The first was Aaron tugging on my arm and saying, Emily, look. The second was that when I turned to see what he was pointing at. The ship. Right there in front of us, just like before, only something was different. Then it had been as real as anything. So real that I couldn't believe Shauna hadn't seen it. Now it was barely visible, a pale, faded, watered-down version of the ship. It was almost transparent. I felt I could swim through it. Together we swam towards the ship. At least we tried to. One moment it was there, the next it had faded so much that it was barely a shadow. I reached a hand out as we approached the disappearing ship and tried to touch it. With a tingling, buzzing feeling in the end of my fingers, my hand went right through the ship's hull. I gasped and jumped back, my tail flickering so hard to get me away from there that it created a cloud of bubbles. "What's going on?" I whispered. "Was it like that yesterday?" Aaron asked. "No, it was absolutely solid. It was alive, a ship with sails and decks and people and weight." I pulled Aaron to the side of the ship, and we snaked along the edge of the channel. "The woman, she was in the porthole somewhere around the middle. Let's see if she's still there." We swam past the portholes yesterday. I'd seen inside them, small cabins, each with the bed and a closet. Today, all we could see was darkness inside everyone. We came to one where I'd seen the woman. "This was it," I said, flickering my tail to hold me back, and I nudged Aaron forward. "You first." Aaron swam up to the porthole and looked inside. "Just darkness like the others," he said. I swam alongside him, and we peered through the glass together. Aaron was right. There was only darkness, except as I stared into the darkness, shapes began to emerge. "Aaron, look over there." I jabbed my finger at the glass, careful not to touch it. "What am I looking at?" Aaron shrugged up his face and stared into the room. "It's just murky gloom like the others." "Right, at the back," I insisted. "The back of what? I can't see anything. I can hardly see the ship." "The back of the room," I said less confidently. Why couldn't he see it? Yes, it was dark, murky, and the sight was fading as I watched, but couldn't still see it clearly enough. Was I imagining it? The bed, I stopped. I couldn't say anything else, couldn't speak. She was there, the woman, sitting on the side of the bed, her head on her hands, slumped as she'd given up. I wanted to swim as far away as I could, and yet I was transfixed. "The woman," I whispered, without taking my eyes off of her. "Over there, on the bed." In that moment, as if she had heard me, the woman raised her head, almost lifeless, almost ghost-like. She left her bed and seemed to float towards the porthole. "I can't see anything," Aaron insisted. His voice started to sound agitated. "Even the ship is disappearing. It's almost gone." I couldn't see the ship. It was fading rapidly, but it was there, and so she was. She met my eyes and reached out a hand towards me. I held my hand up to the porthole, for some reason no longer afraid to touch it. My fingers tingled so hard, it felt as if they were being prompted by hundreds of needles. I ignored the feeling of flattening my hand, so I was holding my palm against the window. The woman did the same. This time I didn't feel glass. I felt a hand, flesh and bone, warm against my palm. I stared at her. Eyes met mine, and then a second later it had changed. In an instant, as if they'd never been there at all. The window, the woman, the ship were gone. "What happened?" Aaron was spinning around in the circle like a shallow of hungry fish, his tail flapping frantically. "Where did it go?" I looked around too. We were still in the channel, but it was now empty. The stillness that had been replaced by the soft current. Seaweed stroked the tip of my tail. Fish darted by in a small groups, like computers just off work and hurrying home. "It's gone," I said. It wasn't the most helpful reply in the world, but what else did it have? "There you are." Shauna rounded a corner and swam towards us. "Are you okay?" "Did we disappear?" Aaron asked her. Shauna scowled. "Not exactly." "What do you mean?" I said. Seth was beside her. "Well, you were there, but sort of not really there," he told us. "It's hard to explain. It was as though you were in another dimension or something." "It was weird," Shauna added, as if we didn't already know that. "Look, I'm really sorry, but I have to go," Seth said. "I don't want to risk Neptune's temper if I'm late." He had my sympathy. I'd been on the receiving end of Neptune's bad moods enough times to know that it wasn't fun. "I'll see if I can find out anything that could help, and will send words from a messenger if I do," Seth went on. "I hate to leave you like this, but it's fine," Aaron said. "We understand." We said our goodbyes to Seth and tried not to watch or listen as he and Shauna said there, except for one bit that I couldn't help overhear. I hope everything's okay with Neptune, Shauna said, and he doesn't give you a hard time for having had a couple days off anyway. He won't, Seth assured, and if he does, I'll tell him I'm entitled to a couple days off with my girlfriend. Then Seth was gone, and the three of us turned back to the island. We saw it again. I told Shauna I didn't really want to pull her out of a happy glow that she suddenly had around her now, that Seth had called her his girlfriend, but this was what we'd come out here for, and I couldn't really focus on anything else. The ship, Shauna asked. I nodded. What about the woman? Did you see her again? Too? Yes. No, Aaron said at the same moment. He looked at me. Emily saw her. I was looking in the exact same place, but I couldn't see her. Emily could see the ship for longer than I could, too. That's Shauna's voice trailed again. I didn't blame her. I mean, what exactly could she say? That's completely freaky. That's impossible. What? That's absolutely beyond ever explaining in a million years. It didn't matter what she thought, whatever else was going on. I knew one thing, we weren't going to figure it out by hanging around in the deserted channel out at sea. Come on, I said, started to swim back the way we'd come. If we go now, we'll probably get back in time for dinner. And then because Shauna was my best friend, and I wanted her to be happy, even if I was in a bag of anxious confusion, I gave her a hug and said, and you can talk about your boyfriend all the way back. I even managed to half listen to Shauna happily talked about Seth, while the three of us swam back to the island, to the others, and to the meal that my stomach was way too jittery for me to even think about eating. Aaron and I filed out for a dining room with everyone else. He'd insisted I eat, so I'd force some food down my throat and tried my best to chit-chat with the others about any old things, but I'd had enough now. Let's get out of here, I said, pulling him outside with me. We made our way onto the road and started walking towards the woods. I'd have been happy just to go and sit in the middle of the trees and stare into space, not talking to anyone or thinking about anything. But I knew that wasn't going to happen, and I knew that we weren't really heading for the woods either. We were heading towards the house in front of us, Lyle's house. We stopped walking. We were almost directly in front of Lyle's front door. I looked at Aaron. Come on, I said. Let's get this over with. We walked up to the path in silence. Aaron turned to me. Ready? He asked. I shrugged. Ready as I'll ever be, I replied, and knocked on the door. We heard shuffling sounds inside. A few moments later, Lyle opened the door. He looked dreadful. Even by his standards, his eyes were like black holes. His shirt was hanging out of his pants, and his hair was riffled and messy. What do you want? He asked. Well, I began. We don't want to bother you. We don't. Then Lyle turned to go back inside. But we have to come to talk to you, I added firmly. Lyle paused for a moment, and then he looked right at me and nodded, as if he knew what we wanted to talk about. As if he'd been expecting it, and though he pretended he hadn't. Then he turned away and went inside, leaving the door open for us. He called over his shoulder, You'd better come in, and close the door behind you. We did both. Take a seat. Lyle waved a hand carelessly across his living room. I try not to look at the dirty plates piled everywhere with half-eaten meal going moldy on them. Lyle must have seen me trying not to look because he scrambled around picking up the dishes and taking them into the kitchen. I wasn't expecting visitors, he said, by the way of the explanation. It's fine, Aaron said brightly. We didn't even notice. Did we, Em? Not at all, I lied as I stared around the room and wondering briefly as he might have been a victim of burglary. Aaron and I found a relatively untouched spot on the sofa and sat down. As I sat, my eyes fell on the dresser at the side of the room, and I no longer cared about or noticed anything else. I stood up, walked over to the dresser, and picked a framed photo of Lyle, came back into the room. It was a wedding picture, a smiling couple. On the left, dressed in a crisp bright suit, was Lyle. He had a huge smile, and I could barely recognize him as the man in front of me now. The woman also smiling brightly, her long red hair flowing over her shoulders and touching the top of her beautiful white dress, was a woman whose face had barely left my thoughts for 2 days. I put the photo down and turned to Lyle. I've seen her, I said before I stopped myself. You what? I've seen her, I repeated, realizing somewhat belatedly that perhaps I should have tried to think of a gentle way of breaking the news to him. Rowena? His voice broke as he said the word, as if the word itself broke him. He cleared his throat. You saw Rowena? He asked again, his words like splinters of glass. As he said her name, I had a vision of her the first time I'd seen her, fist pounding against the porthole. I'm a winner. I thought she was calling and couldn't understand why she is saying that. Now I realize that she hadn't been saying I'm a winner at all. Suddenly, I blindlessly obvious what she's been trying to tell me. I'm Luena. I nodded. I wasn't sure I could trust myself to speak. Lyle stared at me. His face was so white I wondered if he was going to be sick. His eyes were dark like the deepest caves in the sea. He held my gaze for I don't know how long. It felt like forever. The room seemed to close around us, keeping everything else on the outside and leaving the three of us alone in this new world that made no sense and that none of us knew how to explore. Eventually, Lyle spoke in the voice like gravel. He slowly said, You better tell me everything. And so between us we did. We told him all of it, even the parts that we were nervous about in the case we were in trouble. We didn't mean to trespass, Aaron stressed when we told him about finding the chair. We fell, we got lost, and it doesn't matter. Lyle brushed aside the interruption. Go on. I told him about seeing Luena the first time. How did she look? How did she seem? He asked, his voice breaking with urgency. I hesitated. Should I tell him the truth? That she looked as filled with pain and fear as he did now? She looked okay, I mumbled eventually. Lyle let out a breath and his body relaxed a tiny bit. Oh, thank goodness, he said, and knew that for once telling the white lie had been the right thing to do. We told him about going back again. We described the ship, the way it had almost transparent. The weird thing was that only Emily could see Luena. Aaron said, I couldn't see her at all. The ship seemed much less real today, too, I added. Lyle nodded as if this made some sort of sense to him. Go on. That's about it, I finished off. We've told you everything. Lyle didn't respond. He just sat there, leaning forward, on his elbows on his knees, his face pulled into the tight frown, his eyes moving from side to side, as if chasing thoughts around his mind. Then abruptly he stood up and turned away from us. What that it? Now that we told him our story, we were being dismissed. Are you throwing us out? Aaron asked. Lyle spun back around. His gaze was like a dark tunnel that would trap us forever in the depths of the if we weren't careful. Quite the opposite, he said. I'm going to take a few deep breaths, then I'm going to make a hot chocolate for each of us. And then I'm going to come back and sit down and we'll keep talking. I don't know what else there is to say. I blurted out. We've told you everything. Lyle nodded slowly. Yes, I know you have. And believe me, you will never know how grateful I am to you for your bravery and your honesty in doing that. So what else do you want us to tell you? Aaron asked. Lyle paused for a moment, then in a voice as steady as the horizon, he said, I don't want you to tell me anything. Now it's my turn. I'm going to tell you my story. Wow. And that is the end of chapter 11, guys. I will see you guys in chapter 12 in the next video.